What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Sicko Soundoff. I'm Jim Rosati here on North Shore 9. Just like we do every other Friday this offseason, we are here to listen to what you guys have to say. So you hear us talk all the time about what's on our minds. So now it's time to hear what's on your mind. We've got three guests lined up. These three guests were they were chosen in the Discord. So if you want to show up on one of these in the future, make sure you drop into the Discord. Links in the description. That'll allow you the chance to get on the show. So that's it. We got three guests lined up, two of which I know have been on here before. I think one of them is a first time guest. So excited to get to talk to everybody. But before we get into all of that, let me tell you real quick about Bet Online. It continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC, head to Bet Online today and don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. All right. So, without further ado, let's bring our first sicko on the line tonight, and that's going to be AEIOU. AEIOU. What's going on, man? How you doing tonight?
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And I know I'm probably the first time person that you mentioned. Now, I'm
Yeah.
curious, do you see any resemblance in the face? Any?
You you remind me a lot of Neil.
Do you want to know something strange about? I'm actually I'm Neil's brother. I'm Neil's
Hey,
younger brother, and I'm actually been listening to the podcast throughout this year because I learned from Neil. It's like you're doing a podcast, I want to listen in. I
yeah.
actually a little bit of a strange thing is our family when it comes to baseball is a little bit weird. The Pirates my first favorite team, but then when I was about 7, 8 years old, I actually gravitated towards the Tampa Bay Rays. However, I should say the Pirates are still my favorite NL team. And actually, listening to your podcast has helped me, I think, rekindle a lot of the love that I had when my brother first gave it to me when I was growing up. Because
Good
I
stuff.
became a Pirates fan because of Neil, and then I eventually moved to the Rays. And so one question that I had, because I know that I might, if I missed this in one of the podcasts, I've been a little bit worse during listening to off season. My question is,
Yeah, shoot.
I heard you mention like trading, probably not now that you have Horowitz, uh, but I know that you were mentioning, or the people on the podcast were mentioning Yandy Diaz's name, or
Mhm.
maybe like trading for Brandon Lau or one of the people from the Rays. My question is, what do you think that the Pirates could have done to get one of those offensive bats from Rays when the Rays also are suffering from a sort of dearth in a lot of offensive positions and an overflow of pitching?
Yeah, I think the Rays are going to be in that mode right now, at least for the next year or so, where they're just like reloading, retooling. I mean, we kind of saw them last year. They weren't necessarily who we are used to seeing the Rays be. They finished 80 and 82. I would expect something kind of similar this year. And I think the reason why those two names make sense, and we'll get into like the type of return and all that, but I think those two names make sense mostly because Brandon Lau, sorry,
Brandon Lau.
Brandon Lau making a lot of money. It just the Rays are kind of in a similar boat as the Pirates, where like they don't like spending a ton of money. Um, he's on an expiring deal at the end of this year with a club option next season. Yandy Diaz, same thing, kind of not making a ton of money, but when it comes to Pirates, Rays, you know, that territory, uh, good chunk of money. And he's on an expiring deal this year. Same boat though. Club option for next year. So I feel like those are two guys the Rays would like to get somebody for, you know,
Mhm.
because you're not going to see the Rays just like let a free agent walk. So they're going to trade those guys. It's just a matter of like, Do they trade them now? Do they trade them at the deadline? Do they trade them next offseason after, they pick up their option, right? So I think there's a few different moves they can make. I think you get more for the player if you pay them if you move them now. When it comes to the Rays and what they need, I think one thing that they're kind of desperate for is I think they could use someone to just eat innings this season.
Mhm.
They've got a lot of pitchers who are coming back, but a lot of them have just like injury issues. Like, can you really how much can you count on Shane McClanahan to pitch this year? How much can you count on Taj Bradley to pitch this year? How much can you count on Shane
Yeah.
Baz to pitch this year? So like you've got all these guys who they're good pitchers. It's just like how can they get you through a 162 game season? So like I thought like first off, trading the Rays prospects makes sense for these guys,
Mhm.
but also giving them someone who can eat up some innings at the major league level, like a Luis Ortiz or a Bailey Falter. One of those two guys I think would have made some sense. Now you look at the Pirates after they've traded Luis Ortiz. Can you really afford to trade Bailey Falter? You probably could get away with it. As just someone where hey, Rays, here's a guy who can throw 130, 140 innings this year. I think you can get away with it, but then you are now putting yourself at risk of being in the position where if one or two of those starters go down, then you have to start relying on those rookies and prospects that you're hoping are kind of just like your depth guys right now. Your Mike Burrows, Braxton Ashcraft, Bubba Chandlers. We're probably going to see all those guys this year, but do you want to have to rely on those guys? Bubba Chandler probably the only one in that mix where you're like, yeah, I want to rely on him. The other two, it's like we'll see him when we see him.
Mhm.
So I thought that would have made a lot of sense for the Rays. And then again, throwing in some prospects. I think the Pirates have a lot of prospects that are tradable in like that 10 to 30 range on their team. I wouldn't necessarily give up like high end talent for Yandy Diaz or Brandon Lau, mostly because of the money between that. Like I don't think there's a ton of surplus trade value you have there. But I think if you send like Falter and then a couple of top 30 prospects, I think you could work something out. What are your thoughts?
Interesting. I mean, I mean, right now, I think that the Rays, I mean, they traded away Springs a few weeks ago, but right now they have I think if they were to enter the season today, they would have a six-man rotation, or they would have to assign one of their starters to relief to the bullpen. Um, I don't think the Rays would trade for a Bailey Falter at this time.
Okay.
But maybe I'm misjudging the situation. I mean, you're definitely right though that we have a lot of volatile arms that could easily go down. But I think that the Rays are probably going to rely on they're going to rely on either their six man who they start in the bullpen, or they're going to rely on some of the starters that we have in Durham. Sorry, AAA. Um, so, anyway, thank you for answering that
Yeah.
question. I know
Yeah.
that might seem a bit weird. And another thing that I would like to the second thing I'd like to ask is, have you been to Tropicana Field before the roof got torn off?
Yeah. So I went to Tropicana Field for the first time in 2023. It was actually when
Okay.
when the Pirates were 20-8 and they went down to St. Petersburg for that
Right.
series where it was like the Pirates were the best team in the National League, the Rays were the best team in the American League. I flew down for that series because I was like, how many times am I gonna be able to see the first place Pirates? I was like, so I don't know how long this is gonna last. So I was down there
Right.
for that. So a lot happened in that series too. I think like Vince Velasquez got hurt for the Pirates. I want to say someone on the Rays got hurt too. It
I
might have
don't
been
remember. I'm sorry.
yeah, one of their guys got hurt. It might have been it might have been it might have been Springs like got hurt that
Oh
series.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that sounds about right. But my
I think it
knowledge of
was.
early 2023 is,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I don't have quite the mind for baseball that my brother does.
Yeah.
Um,
No, but
but
yeah, no, I have the luxury. I work remote, so I was able to fly down. I worked from my hotel room in downtown St. Petersburg during the day, went to the games at night. Doug, Dougie Fresh, Dougie Fresh drove over to St. Petersburg from Alabama that week, and so we got to catch a couple of the games together. Yeah, it was a good time. I mean, Pirates got
That's awesome.
swept, so that sucked. But yeah, that was my only
Yeah.
time at the Trop.
Yeah, you can ask either one of my brothers, but I have at multiple times suggested that I want to see a Pirates Rays World Series at some point, but that's probably not going to happen. One
It
final
could.
thing, can you explain why PNC Park is the better park? As because that's a
Ooh,
definitive fact that
yeah,
I
I
will
think.
stand by, even as a Rays fan, that I think that, PNC is probably my favorite park in the majors.
Yeah,
Maybe
I've been to most of them. I'm missing a few. The one that probably gives PNC the run for its money that I haven't been to yet is San Francisco. I haven't been there yet, but I've been pretty much everywhere else. Um, the comparison between Tropicana Field and PNC Park, it's hard to compare the two because they're so different. I feel like Tropicana Field, when you walk in, it's like you're going to watch a game in like a giant Costco or something. Like the lighting's weird. The outfield turf is like a weird color. There's like patches of the turf are different colors. Like it just looks bad. It looks bad. I will say this: the one part of the Tropicana field I liked, they had that area in like the center field, like behind the batter's eye, with a bunch of different like restaurants and bars and stuff. So
yes.
that was a pretty neat area. Their standing room only section, like all throughout the outfield, was nice. So there's a couple things about Tropicana Field I like. I like the area like right around the ballpark too, like that walk from like if you're staying downtown St. Petersburg and you're walking to the
Mhm.
ballpark, lots of stuff like right on that strip right there. So it's got some things going for it. It's just the building itself is a disaster. I
Yes.
can't even imagine. And now, I mean, they need to put something a little bit more state of the art there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
know I may have gone over, but thank you so much for, having me on. Hopefully, it's not too bad to have a person who's, uh a person who's not a complete Pirates fan on, but I still love the work you guys do, and, especially during the season, I love your, post game. That's the main content I listen to, so thank you so much for everything you do.
Yeah, love it. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. However you consume it, that's awesome. And yeah, it's nice to have a relative of Neil's on. I'm a big
Yes.
fan of Neil. He's a good guy.
Yep. Alright.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. How about that? Neil's brother. As soon as Paul gets a hold of this video, he's gonna. I don't know what Paul's gonna think. I don't know that Paul. Maybe Hayden though. Where's Hayden at? Hayden may have some thoughts too. All right. So that was Neil's brother, AEIOU. Next up, we've got a couple of veterans that have been on the show a couple of times. So let's bring on John. John, what's happening? Happy Friday.
Friday. I'm on winter break, so I don't even know what day of the week it is. So I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's Friday.
I love having hearing perspective from people from other teams, but I do think the easy answer for why PNC is better is because one will be playing games, the other one won't.
Well, they're both outdoor stadiums now.
Yeah.
I guess there's that. Yeah.
Yeah. First question. Obviously,
All right.
I don't know if you can tell, I'm pretty under the weather. No
Yeah, I
super
hope you feel
stuffed up.
better.
Hating it. So first question. If you're feeling under the weather, and for chat too, what are like the homemade remedies? What are the cures? What do you go for?
Ooh. That's a good question. I feel like with
Sleep?
me, I drink a lot of like soda. I like the fizziness of it because typically when I get hurt, it's usually like when I get sick, it's like a throat issue or it's like a head cold, something like that. Yeah, so it's like just pump me with like Diet Cokes.
I'm gonna have to go out and get some soda then.
Yeah. Sleeping also is good. I like sleep.
That's
But
a good
outside
answer.
that, yeah, like if there's like I don't know
The
if
old
there's like
school
a
chicken noodle soup.
yeah.
I've been drinking some hot tea with honey in it. Yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I don't necessarily, depending on how I feel, I may not want to eat anything when I'm sick. So, but yeah, pump me full of like some sort of soda just for the fizziness aspect. I'll be a
Gotcha.
little better.
Makes sense. To piggyback off of that, I'm supposed to go with the girlfriend's nephew to the batting cages tomorrow, and I'm looking to dominate. You see, so in your opinion, should I go when I'm not 100% and maybe put up a subpar performance, or wait until I'm 100% and just assert my dominance?
Let me ask you this: how comfortable are you? I'm like, are like, can you handle a bat?
Yeah,
Pretty well.
I played in a wood bat league. I still play. Like
Okay.
I coach high school, like all that good stuff.
Yeah, I would just tough it out.
Okay.
I would tough it out. Yeah. Because I mean, how much is it really it's not gonna affect your swing all that much. And when it comes to the batting cage, you really just need to be good for like a minute at a time, and then you can take a little bit of recovery, a little bit of recovery
so
time.
the chat said slow pitch, fast pitch, what we talking? I don't know. Apparently there's cages inside of Dick's Sporting Goods now. So I don't know.
I didn't know that.
It's near Philly. But I don't know what the speed gets up to. I'd be comfortable up to about 80. Anything other than that, I'd look foolish.
I feel like there's not too many cages that go up to 80 nowadays. I know here in Louisville, there was a cage that was by my old apartment that I would go to, and I think it maxed out at 80, but then they closed it. They tore it down. It's now like a hotel or something.
Oh, I hate to see it.
And so there's a few like indoor facilities that like all the local baseball teams use. Trying to think, Louisville Slugger Factory has a batting cage inside of it. So I think that was actually the last place I've taken some cuts, was the Louisville Slugger museum and factory.
That sounds cool.
But that one didn't get up very, very fast. But no, if I were you, I would, tough it out. You can do it.
Okay, noted. Just moving on, I have like a little bit of a small list here. 1 to 10, how big is the hole in right field?
Ooh. How big is the hole? Like is 10 being like the biggest hole?
Well, in relative to what we have, like Palacios over like a Verdugo, for instance, are you like, how much confidence do you have in the options that are available? Sawinski,
how much confidence do I have in the options that are available for the Pirates right now that are like in the organization?
Correct.
10 being the most confident?
Sure.
Like a
1,
like
2, 3.
2. I'm a 2. I have zero. I have more confidence right now probably in Josh Palacios than anybody. Like I think if you trotted a Joshua Palacios,
Yeah, get it right.
If you went Palacios Cook and you platooned those two in right field, I think you could do better than like what you got last year out of that position, because it was just so bad. But you're probably still looking at like maxing out at 1 WAR, like maxing out. Like if each player is like, that's probably your ceiling with those two. But you're probably not gonna be worse than -1 WAR. would be.
Yeah. Well, do you know
guess.
off the top of your head what the number in right field was last year, from Sawinski to BDLC to? It was bad. It was bad.
So in 2024, the Pirates right fielders put up a -2.0 FWAR.
Wow, that's real bad.
And so I don't think they can get worse than that. I
think that's a fair thing to say. Yeah.
Because I think Palacios at least hits enough that like he's kind of like he's your replacement level guy. Like you trot Palacios out there 100 times, and he's going to give you a 0 WAR.
Is Verdugo enough of an upgrade that you would spend, say, $8 million on him?
If I had to.
Okay.
Like he's not my top option. Like I would still try to go after one of the other bats, and we've had this conversation in Discord for weeks now. Like,
well, when there's
all
nothing else to talk about, we're
yeah, yeah.
same
So like
conversation.
all those outfielders that are out there potentially on the trade block, like I'd rather go get those guys. Like go get Taylor Ward. If you're in on Alex Verdugo, go see what Taylor Ward costs. Go see what Jesus Sanchez costs. Go see what Mike Yastrzemski costs. Go see what these guys cost. And if like none of those guys are available for anything reasonable, Alex Verdugo is probably, a 1-WAR player, which is a 3-WAR upgrade from last year, but it's still not good,
Yeah.
I just
Fair.
don't think it's just not it's not a needle mover. Like if you get Alex Verdugo, it's not really anything to get too excited about.
Yeah, I feel like now we're at a point where Boston's figured out their pitching situation, so we're not going to get a needle mover. The only needle mover that we could reasonably have got was Wilyer Abreu, and they are confident with their top 6 in their rotation, so that's highly unlikely now.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few, like, I like Taylor Ward more than most people do, I think. Like, he's someone you can play every day. You don't have to platoon him. He's gonna hit some home runs. He plays decent defense. So, like, I think if I'm looking at guys who are somewhat realistic, and like I don't know what the Angels are doing. I don't think anybody knows what the Angels are doing. They're doing crazy things like they always do. But like, yeah, like what would Taylor Ward cost? Like I would
Thomas
really
Harrington and Jack Sawinski. I think if you take MLB trade values at their word for what they do, that's a fair trade.
I'd probably do it. And I like Thomas Harrington a lot, but like you need some offense right now. And like if that's the way, if that's what you have to do to get it, then do it. I
100% agree.
I would try to not trade Thomas Harrington, but like if you have to move Thomas Harrington to get a 2.5 to 3 WAR corner outfielder, then you do it.
Yeah, I would like that move. I still think for what they seem to be after, Mike Yastrzemski is probably the cheapest. They wouldn't have to give up a top 100 prospect. He has a good track record of putting out 1.5 to 2 WAR seasons. So he'd be an upgrade over what they have. I don't know. I just want to move.
Yeah,
we're in the 40 days till pitchers and catchers report.
I know. I'm not as high on Yastrzemski. I know. I think what Yastrzemski offers you is like a pretty high floor, like you mentioned. Like Yastrzemski's never been worse than a 1.5 WAR player.
But he's also never been more than a 2.5.
Yeah, like he's like he is who he is. But like if Yastrzemski's giving you 1.5 WAR, that's 3.5 WAR better than the previous year. And if you could get him for almost nothing, and he's on an expiring deal, he's gonna be like he's a rental. So yeah, he shouldn't cost a ton. But again, like are the Giants trading him? Like the Giants don't have to trade Mike Yastrzemski.
To the best of my knowledge, they're still one of the favorites for Santander.
Yeah. So I could see that. Like if they land Santander, then like he's probably available.
Also, there's talk that with the Orioles missing out on Burns, that he may go back. And then we can have the Heston Kjerstad debate again for the 100th time.
Yeah, honestly, I would take Kjerstad. I want somebody a little bit more proven, but like Heston Kjerstad's hit. Like when given the opportunity, he's hit.
Yeah.
The strikeout problems more there with him than everybody else that we've been mentioning. But
the strikeouts are with most people. Like K rates are elevated across the board. Which makes me think we might not be interested because we've been targeting guys with pretty low K rates, like IKF and Horwitz. And
I was going to say, have we been targeting anybody?
Verdugo, allegedly, he's got a low strikeout rate.
He does have a low strikeout rate. Yeah, I do not want Verdugo. Verdugo just strikes me as like the bare minimum. Like it was like, okay, we have a hole and we need a corner outfielder who's available. And you look at the list of people who are available. like Alex Verdugo is what would be the worst possible option you could pick to address the situation.
I feel like that's Tommy Pham for me, but
I think Tommy Pham's better than Alex Verdugo. Like,
fair enough. I hope we don't have to get either of them. So
hopefully we don't have to have either of those conversations. I think there's also a reason why Tommy Pham's bounced around from like 8 or 9
teams in
different
3
teams.
years.
Yeah, in the last 5 years. So
okay, well, I don't want to keep you up to I don't want to take too much time. You can go ahead and get to the next guy.
All right, John. Hey, feel better, all right?
I will. Later.
Hit some bombs tomorrow.
Yep, bye.
See ya. All right, so that was John. A couple questions here in the chat too before we get to OG. Penn, Jim, can we get a reaction to Ground Chuck getting a 1-year, $15 million deal? I think it's a good fit. They were talking about how he wanted to stay sort of close to home. He's got a house in Bradenton. Sarasota is only like 30 minutes down the road. Good spot for him. He gets to stay with a competitive team. I think it's a good pickup for the Orioles too. If there's one thing that the Orioles have lacked the last couple of seasons, it's been like postseason pitching. There's not too many guys out there who have more postseason pitching experience and more like big game pitching experience than Charlie Morton, who's like done it. He's done the job. So I like the move a lot for Baltimore. $15 million. I mean, they've got the money to spend. They should have the money to spend. They're going to win a ton of games this year because their core is so good. It's just a matter of like supplementing that core with pieces. And I think Charlie Morton's a really good piece. I think they probably would have preferred to have like Corbin Burns, and I would imagine they're still probably in the market for someone else. But Charlie Morton's a good pickup. Like if you're a good team and you're looking for somebody to kind of solidify your rotation and someone you feel comfortable giving the ball to in October, I feel comfortable giving Charlie Morton the ball in October. So, all right. Well, let's go to he's like a veteran of this show by this point. Let's go to OG. OG, how we doing tonight? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jim. I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Great. Hopefully you're not sick like John.
No, but my son had whatever stomach bug is knocking people out a few days ago, and I'm hoping that I missed it, but I don't know if I'm out of the woods yet. So we'll see. So far, so good.
Well, best of luck to you.
Yeah, I don't want to get that. That's not, the worst. I deal with those the worst. Like when I'm sick with a stomach bug, it's worse than the flu. It's worse than colds. It's worse than everything else. I'm a wreck. Don't want it.
Yeah.
Hopefully I miss it.
Let's hope so.
And to dovetail on the last subject there, those birds, they're creeping up there in payroll. They're at 15.
They are a
I
little
looked
bit.
at Fangraphs after that signing.
Yeah.
They're sneaky spending some money, and they're not getting credit for it because, all of the hot takers out there are still peppering them with, when are the birds going to make a move? When are they going to make a move? Well, they're making little moves. They're making moves. They're not making huge moves. They're not signing Juan Soto, but they're up over 150. They're creeping up in there into real money.
Well, and I think too, like if there's a move the Orioles need to make, it's probably like they need another starting pitcher. They need another pitcher.
Yeah.
But like they don't need anyone for that lineup. That lineup got them 98 wins or whatever last year.
Well, they already plugged their hole in the outfield. I mean, if they, they're probably not getting Santander back, but they went on and they got O'Neill. They got him early. And, there's pitchers out there still. And I don't know. They're not going to replace Burns. They don't have like a number one. They don't have like a playoff game one ace type guy, probably. But
probably. But there's also like Grayson Rodriguez could always just turn into that guy.
Or at least he could be that. He could get hot and be that guy right when you need him to in October. You never know. It's possible. So he was the
number one pitching prospect in baseball at one point.
He was, yeah. But so what I wanted to come on and talk about is something that has come up in the chat a few times, and I wanted to bounce it off of you and get your take on it too. And it's the whole concept, like, and to set it up, and I'm sure for all the listeners and viewers too, true or false, the Pittsburgh Pirates are good at developing hitters.
False.
False, right? So the question is why? And we often hear like it's almost like a truism, like the Pirates can't develop, they can't develop, they can't develop. And I got to kind of questioning that sort of base assumption and wondering, what is the through line? Because you can go back before Ben Cherington was hired, and you can look at the drafts under the sort of the second half of the Huntington administration, and they didn't really produce any bats. I mean, they're pretty dreadful in terms of the guys that came out and turned into like real MLB players. And the through line that I landed on is Joe Delicari. He was hired. He worked for the club dating all the way back to, I think, 2007. He was somewhere in the scouting hierarchy, and he got promoted in 2012 to be the director of amateur scouting. And he held that position until like 1 or 2 years ago, when he was actually promoted out of it. He's now VP of some kind of, I forget the exact title, but he was actually promoted
he's
out
like
of
the
the
VP of, he is the vice president of player personnel.
Right.
Yep.
So he actually got promoted above the guy who sort of like runs the draft. As I understand it, that position runs the draft. And now it's Horowitz from Boston, who they hired last year, right? He now has that amateur scouting title, and his first draft was last year with Connor Griffin. And I guess we'll see. He's posting his cage videos over the winter, as they always do.
Yep.
I've
been sucked into too many cage videos over the last decade. I don't need to get excited about a
best shape
video
of his life.
Yeah.
We'll see. But so we got a ways to go before we know whether or not that personnel change made a difference. But if you look at all going all the way back to really Josh Bell, and you brought this up in the chat, has there been a Pirate other than Josh Bell, or what was the last Pirate that was drafted that has a career 100 or better WRC plus? And Josh Bell was sort of the consensus in the chat. And someone brought up Austin Meadows, who was traded away famously in that Archer deal and has a career WRC plus over 100. Two bats drafted since 2012. It is now 2025. We had a draft. That's a dozen drafts later. We have two guys that ever panned out to be league average hitters. So to me, and the other reason that this struck me is that the Cherington group came in and made a whole big deal, probably because Nutting also made a big deal about, I don't ever want to see players leave and get good again. Like that was that stuck in his craw when guys like Meadows and Glasnow and Charlie Morton and Garrett Cole, all these guys who, regardless of how good or not they were in Pittsburgh, went on to much bigger and better things almost overnight with new clubs. And so there was this whole thing about, we can't let that happen again. That was part of the justification for getting a whole new front office. So the Cherington group comes in, they hire all of these new development leads. John Baker was put in charge of all of that. He came from the Cubs as like a mental skills coach or something like that, specialist in that area. And he just got moved out of that role himself. But the common thread that goes all the way back to even before those playoff runs was Joe Delicari's drafts produced nothing. Like, there were a handful of pitchers here and there, but the bats that they have been drafting for over a decade have just been dreadful. And it's been such a drag. And my thesis is that it has a lot more to do with acquisition than it does with any kind of teaching for the bats. I think there's a lot of teaching potential with pitchers, especially with all the technology, where they're having these guys who are trained to within, an inch of their limits, what their bodies can do, and they have just the right biomechanical measurements to say, move your finger 2 millimeters this way down the seam, and tighten up your arm slot. You're drifting a little down when you're throwing your slider. They've got all of they can react to changes, and they can see it in real time while they're working bullpens. That doesn't exist for hitters. Hitters, you're reacting, and I'm not in there. I'm just a dude in the basement. But like John in the last segment, I play some men's wood bat league stuff, and so I watch a lot of tutorial and what's the state of the art thinking and hitting right now, and what do you do? And it's my surmise. I surmise that it's probably basically the same everywhere. That you've got hitting coaches when you're talking about mechanics. Everybody's trying to stay connected the same way. Everybody's trying to sequence the same way. Everybody's trying to use their hips the same way. Everybody's trying to not be handsy the same way. All of those mechanical cues that the pitchers can just this one weird trick. Doctors hate them. Batters hate them. This one weird trick. That hitters, there's no one weird trick for hitters. You either got it or you don't. And it's a matter of getting exposed to better competition. That's what the minors are for. That's what the development is. Just let them marinate, let them get their reps. And if they got it, it'll come out. And if they don't, then they're probably a Pirate. But what do you disagree that there's more to the nature than the nurture when it comes to hitters? Am I barking up the wrong tree hearing what I'm saying?
I used to think that. Like hitting is more of like a God-given ability, where you can't take an average, and none of these guys are average. We're all talking about the top 1% of baseball players in the world, but you can't take like an average Major League Baseball player and all of a sudden make him good. And then there was actually a book that I read that like completely changed my mind on this thing. And it was written by Ben Lindbergh and Travis Sawchik, the MVP Machine. I don't know if you've read it, but it really just kind of goes through like the art of making, obviously these very talented baseball players, but like, how do you get the most out of them? And I really think there's just more than anything, it's a communication thing, because I think like what you said is right. Like hitting is hitting. Like everybody's trying to do the same thing. Everybody's trying to square up the ball. Everybody's trying to get a launch angle. Like everyone's trying to do the same thing. It's just some people are better at it than others. But I also think when it comes like from a coaching standpoint and a developing standpoint, I think there are certain people where they all maybe know the same thing of like what needs to be done, but there are certain people that are just better at explaining it to the players, better at communicating that to the players, and like, or they're just better at getting the player to understand like, okay, I know this is what I need to do, but how do I need to do it? I think there are only a certain amount of people out there who are really good at demonstrating, showing, teaching that to people. Like I said, if you haven't read MVP Machine, I highly recommend it because it kind of changed my thinking on this. They really go into like Justin Turner a lot, like as an example. Like Justin Turner was 29 years old, about to be out of baseball. He goes to see a different hitting coach. He tells him just some new things, and then all of a sudden he's a perennial all-star. Mookie Betts is in there too, where it's like Mookie Betts was always one of the best players in the league, but like, what did Mookie Betts do to go from one of the best players in the league like to the best player in the league? And so like it goes through a bunch of examples there that I found really, really interesting. And I think the biggest piece is just like having someone in your organization who's not only smart and can figure this stuff out, but can put it into words or put it into some sort of consumable data that allows the players to be like, aha, yes, I know exactly what you mean, and I know how to do it. And I think the Pirates probably have people like that on the pitching side, because like you said, the technology in pitching is so advanced. Yeah, like during a session, you can literally tweak anything you want. Like, it's all real-time data. The hitting, I don't think the technology's there yet, but I think there are guys who are just better at teaching it than others. And the Pirates haven't figured out how to get a hold of any of those guys and get them into their organization, or getting the right players who need to hear it from the right people. Like, and maybe it's something where like not every coach will work with every player. Like, it's very individualized. It's a problem. I think there's an identification problem. I think that's like, I'm not saying Delicari's not to blame with any of this. Like, clearly there's a problem with identifying talent, but I think it's a mixture of both. I think they were bad at identifying people, and I think they're bad at teaching people. And when you add those two things together, you get a decade of hitters who you've produced nothing. I think that's where
it's not binary for sure. Yeah. And we heard that the sentiment that you were just saying there about the communication. That's what we were hearing sort of in dribs and drabs, kind of leaking out of the organization. People who, got off the record stuff from players and young guys who were kind of bouncing up and down between Indy, that they would just get clobbered with information and no context as soon as they landed in Pittsburgh. And that was even a little bit kind of intimated in Sherrington's, farewell remarks to Andy Haynes. So yeah, hopefully Matt Haig is a better communicator, a better distiller of information, if that's the trick to it. And the sort of the corollary to that, that sort of like part B of my thought was that the guys who are truly elite are the guys who are the most adaptable and sort of have an intuition inside themselves where they need less of that exterior, the information. Like, they get it. Like, they could almost be a hitting coach themselves, but they also have the physical gifts. Mm-hmm. And like, I think about Cal Ripken Jr. He had like half a dozen or more different batting stances over his career.
Yeah, I feel like he changed his stance every year. Yeah.
Yeah, it was always a little different. And he even talks about it. And it's, there's some guys who, like, they might not even recognize why they're good the way that they are, but like, it has more to do with their ability to adapt constantly without even knowing they're doing it. And, they say that the league will figure you out and you better punch back. Well, that they're the ones that punch back the best. So that was sort of my thesis, was that whatever it is, whether it's not being able to find guys that are like that, whether that's, something that you see in interviews or something that you pick up on watching them play, if it can somehow show up in stats or measurements, who knows? Like, the Orioles seem to know how to find hitters like that, or either that or they got just phenomenally lucky. But it seems like they just know how to do it, because the guys that they have doing it did it for the Astros a decade ago. So they've got a track record there. It's just an interesting sort of like philosophical discussion. And I think I agree with you. I probably do need to go find a copy of MVP Machine. I have, what's Long and Hagen's other book? I've been working my way through. You mean
Sawcheck's book or Ben?
Well, you mentioned Long and Hagen. He has a book. It's a book about valuing players. I forget the title of it. You probably know the one I'm thinking of. It's sitting up on my nightstand.
I don't know Long and Hagen's book. I know Ben Lindbergh wrote this one with Travis Sawchik, but Ben's also written a book with Sam Miller that was really good. I
should Google it real fast here. Oh, that's bad radio. Anyway, so Eric Longenhagen wrote a book about evaluating players. I'm pretty sure it's his book, and it's not just him on the forward, and I'm thinking of his name on the cover, but it basically finding the right guys to future value. That's the value. One. Yeah. And that's the rating system that Fangraphs uses, because Eric is the prospect guru there. So the FV value. So if you ever go to Fangraphs and you see FV 50, FV 60, etc., those are the really good ones. That's the book that sort of like lays out what future value means and how it's built. So I'm still getting through that one. Yeah, good book recommendation for these winter nights where no moves get made by the Pirates or a lot of other teams either. There's still a lot of guys out there that need to find a home.
Yeah, not a whole lot. I mean, it's been pretty quiet here the last couple of weeks. But yeah, some good book recommendations. MVP Machine, Future Value. I haven't read Future Value. I'll need to pick that one up at some point. But yeah, MVP Machine, highly recommend that book. If you're a baseball fan, like you're gonna like it. That's a Jim.
Sounds
guarantee.
Good. Yeah. All right. Jim.
All right, OG. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. Hope you don't.
Thanks for having me.
Get out of the woods on that one.
Stay on the other side of the room. See if I can avoid it.
Yeah. There we go. All right, man. Hey, have a good rest of your Friday and have a good weekend. Okay.
Yeah. You too. Take care.
All right. Thanks. All right. Well, that's our show. 45 minutes. We got some really good discussions in. Again, this is a show entirely for you guys. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about. Next show will probably be coming not next Friday, but the Friday after. Look for, again, join our Discord. Links in the description. If you want to pop on the show, you don't necessarily even have to show your face. Everybody showed their face today, but if you want to stay anonymous, you don't want to show your face, you don't have to. It's not a requirement. But yeah, at any point in time, join that Discord. Once we put that contest up for you to join the show, enter the contest, and we'll pick some people to be on. But yeah, appreciate AEIOU, John and OG, all for coming on here tonight. That's all we got. Let's go Bucks. I'll see you guys later. All right, that wraps up this episode of North Shore 9. Thanks so much for tuning in, whether you're listening on the podcast or catching us on YouTube. If you enjoyed the show, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps us grow. And if you're listening on the podcast, a quick review goes a long way in helping others find the show. Plus, be sure to tell a friend about us. There's always room for more here in the NS9 community. And for those looking to support us a little more, consider joining our Patreon, become an MVP member, and get exclusive perks while helping us continue to bring you more of the Pirates content you love. Thanks again for all your support, and let's go Bucks.
Yeah.